From the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
All right, good morning, folks. Happy Tuesday. Welcome to the month of December. 31 days until the end of this miserable year. A lot of things to talk about on today's Practitioner Brief. We'll get right into that here in just a moment. But before we do, make sure you subscribe to our podcast right now. If you're watching us on YouTube, make sure you turn on the notification bell. Veteran November is over. We had a wrap-up party yesterday. Thank you for all who showed up. Thank you for everyone who listened, and the feedback has been amazing. This is now going to be a yearly project. If you are a veteran and you want to be part of what's kind of been born out of this, then I urge you to contact me directly on LinkedIn or Twitter, where I can add you to a private group we've created where we can kind of where we network and help each other and really do support the veteran community here in the States. So make sure you do that. You can get our entire practitioner brief on our website at cyberhubpodcast.com. And now, without further ado, let's get into today's headlines. So yesterday I promised that I was going to talk about Dominion, and I've got a few little pieces of information. I have yet to get verification, and that's why I'm not going to be talking about it again today. Like I said, I hoped yesterday that I'd have verification at some point during the day yesterday in order to give it to you guys today, but I don't yet. I hope to get it today, being optimistic, but it's very interesting, and I'll touch base on a little bit of it here towards the end of the podcast. So let's get into today's most pressing practitioner news out there, where Docker malware is now common. So dev teams need to take Docker security seriously. A Magecart attack convincingly hijacks Payapl transactions at checkout, and digitally signed Bandook Trojan re-emerges after a 13-year hiatus. Let's start with the Docker malware, which is now common. So towards the end of 2017, a major shift in the malware seen as cloud-based technologies became much more popular. So did the cyber criminals, and they started targeting Docker and Kubernetes systems. Most of these attacks followed a very simple pattern where threat actors scanned for misconfigured systems that had admin interfaces exposed online in order to take over servers and deploy cryptocurrency mining malware. Over the past 3 years, these attacks have intensified, and new malware strains and threat actors targeting Docker and Kubernetes are now being discovered on a regular basis. But despite the fact that malware attacks on Docker servers are now commonplace, many web developers and infrastructure engineers have not yet learned their lesson from these attacks. Over the past year, malwares like Docky, Ngrok, Kinsing, XOR, DDoS, AES, DDoS, Team TNT, and others have scanned for Docker servers and left the Docker management API exposed online, and then abused it to deploy malicious OS images to plant backdoor or install cryptocurrency miners. The latest of these malware strains was discovered last week, named Black Rhoda. This is a simple backdoor Trojan that is basically a simplified version of the Carbon Strike beacon implemented in the Go programming language. Only a Linux version was discovered up until this point, and it's unclear how this malware is being used. Researchers don't know if a Windows versions also exist, and if Black Rhoda is being used for cryptocurrency mining, or if it's used for running a DDoS botnet on top of powerful cloud servers. So companies, web developers, and engineers running Docker systems as part of a production systems are advised to review the official Docker documentation to make sure they've secured Docker's remote management capabilities with the right authentication and certificate-based authentication systems. Plenty of tutorials on this. Links are all on our website at cyberhubpodcast.com. Make sure you check them out there. A Magecart attack convincingly hijacks Payapl transactions at checkout. So obviously, 23 days from Christmas, 9 days from Hanukkah. A lot of web shopping, especially with COVID-19. This year, we expect to see the web shopping be increasingly dominant as less people visit the malls and the stores. And so a Magecart, which is an umbrella that encompasses several different threat groups who all use the same attack methods, have now compromised and found a way to implant a PayPal iframe in the checkout process to get users' PayPal information, and then from there take over the victim's PayPal account and run up transactions on their accounts. So once the victim actually enters and submits their payment information, the skimmer does exfil the data to apptechmaker.com, a domain registered just in October of last year and connected to TalkTalk. The latter was seen in a previous Magecart attack, and then from there, it's left for those guys to take advantage of that information. Again, if you're shopping online, one big thing to talk about is use a prepaid card. Tell your friends and family to use prepaid cards. Don't use your bank cards. Don't use PayPal. Maybe don't use anything. If you're buying from big brands, that's one aspect. But if you're buying from small specialty shops that advertise on Instagram or Facebook or anything like that, Pinterest and others, my recommendation, use a prepaid card. That way you don't fall victim for it. Let's talk about the Bandook Trojan, who reemerges in a global spy campaign. So according to Checkpoint Research, Bandook was last spotted in 2015 and in 17 and 18 in Operation Manual and Dark Caracal campaigns. According to the firm, dozens of digitally signed variants of this commodity malware are popping up in an unusually large variety of sectors and locations. Targeted entities include those in government, finance, energy, food, healthcare, education, IT, and legal sectors, but located in places like Chile, Cyprus, Germany, Indonesia, Italy, Singapore, Switzerland, Turkey, and the US. In the latest attack, the malware arrives on a target's computer in the form of a malicious Microsoft Word document delivered inside a zip file. Checkpoint found that the theme of the document revolves around cloud-based services like Office 365, OneDrive, and Azure. Recipients are promised access to other documents if they click on the enabled content, which at that point starts the attack of the PowerShell, and from there, the entire malware. So with that being said, you can get all of the information on Bandook on our website at cyberhubpodcast.com, including the chain of attack and some of the ways to use to really stop it and prevent it and mitigate some of the risks that come from Bandook. Obviously, it's been around for 13 years, being used, slightly developed, but still can be mitigated. Let's talk a little bit about Dominion here for just 30 seconds, folks. So we've gotten information and we're trying to verify it around what Chris Krebs, former director of CISA Chris Krebs, said on a 60-minute interview on Sunday about the integrity of the election. And by the way, Director Krebs was absolutely right. These machines, all of the voting machines, were not accessed, were not hacked in the traditional terms of the hack. The challenge with Dominion, and something where we've been privy to some documents here, and I've seen some of these documents, and I'm waiting to get authentication of whether what I saw is correct or not, is whether or not there was an algorithm in there that switched some of those votes. And for that, you cannot blame CISA and Director Krebs. And that's one of the points here that need to be made. Which is that at that point becomes the responsibility of the Secretary of State and the counties that engage with Dominion or any other voting machine for that aspect. So until we verify, I'm not going to go any further in this story. I will say that we're trying to verify that the documents that I've seen are actually true and correct. So that way we're not bringing you any misinformation or disinformation or anything of the nature that we cannot stand behind. So until I do that, I'm going to stop right there. That's it for our practitioner brief today. We'll be back with a lot more tomorrow, so make sure you do subscribe to our podcast. Until then, thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for tuning in, and stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media. To our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.